Does your world look like this?
Yes.
And you don't know how to edit your light?
Yes.
And do you want your world to look from this to this?
Yes!
Well, hello everyone and welcome back. In today's video, we are going to learn the basics of lighting, how to make your world look better, because lighting is essential in Unity, and without lighting, your scene would look like... Okay, you got the point. Anyway, we are not gonna explain a lot of things. We're just gonna explain the basic, what you need to change and what things that is gonna make your world look better. So the first thing you're gonna do is we're gonna go to the edit, and then we're gonna go to project settings, and then in project settings we go to the player, and then in the player we scroll down to other settings. We change the color space from gamma to linear. This will just give our scene a better view and a better lighting. Now you finish that, you close it, and you go back to your scene. Now the first thing you need is a directional light. If you don't know what directional light is, it's basically the lights that serve as the sun. So if basically whenever you direct that light, the shadows will be direct to. So for example, here I have a directional light. It doesn't matter where you put it. What matters is the rotation of the directional light. So for example, if I change it, the shadows will change, but not right now. It will not change. It's because I'm using baked light maps, and I'm not using real time because real time doesn't work with Highrise Studio. It's not supported. If you go here to the right side in the inspector, I have a type directional, and the mode is baked. And if you put it on real time, you will not see any difference, and that's because it's not supported. So you have to keep it on bake. Now, if you don't know how to get the directional light, it's really simple. Go to the hierarchy, right click and select light, and then directional light, and this will create a new one for you. Now in the directional light, you have to change few things, which is the color and the intensity. So the light appearance should be color, and the color should be whatever you want. So for example, if I change this to red, it will give the scene the red lights, but we want to make it white. And the intensity is how strong it is. I suggest something between 0.6 to 0.8, which works the best, I think, and you can mess around with this however you want. As for shadows has to be soft shadows, just to give them this good looking for the shadows. It's really up to you. If you don't want shadows, if you want hard shadows, you can mess around with the settings however you want. Now that's it for the directional light. Now we have to edit our objects to make the light affect them. So to do that, you have to basically select any object you have in the scene. For example, this tree right here, and this tree has to be set to static. When it's set to static, it will basically not move from its place or its position. So basically whenever the light hits the tree, it will create the shadow and it will give it this better look. You can see here on the screen I have shadows from the trees, and I have shadows from everything because all my objects are basically static. I mean, even the leaderboard is static. Now that's done, you have to go back to lighting. In the lighting section, if you don't have it, you basically go to window and then rendering and then lighting, or you hit Ctrl 9. When you do that, this will open up for you, and this is the settings that we're going to change. Now if you scroll down to light mapper, you can choose progressive CPU or GPU, depends on which one is better for you. If you have a good GPU, you can just set it to GPU so it render faster. And if you scroll down to light map resolution, this is the resolution of the map that we are going to bake later. If you are testing your world, I suggest you put this at a small value like 10, but if you want to finally build your world and then release it, you can increase this value to something like 20. So it will take more time for you to bake it, but it will also make your scene look better. So I suggest whenever you're testing the world, you set this to 10, and whenever you finally finish everything, you set this to 20, if that makes sense. Now if you go to the environment, the real-time shadow color, this is the shadow that's coming from the directional light. So for example, if you put this to red, the shadows will turn into somewhat red. And then we have the skybox material. We talked about this before, I'm not gonna explain it again, but this is basically the sky around the scene. As for the sun source, it's where the light or the sunlight is coming from, and again we have to set it as directional light. If you click on the circle and you choose here directional light. As for the environment lighting, this is really important. I always use a gradient because I like these colors. I like the way they look. And to show you an example of what this will do to our scene, I'm gonna hit play mode and I'm gonna show you what it does. So now that I'm in the scene, if I move around, you can see the color of my avatar right here. It looks natural, it looks good. But if I change the colors from, if I change the source color to, for example, skybox, you can see here everything's turned dark. If you change it back to the color, and you can see here it's a bit, the ambition color, it's a bit dark. dark, but if you increase this to make it a full white, it's gonna light up the entire scene, and you can change it. You can like do whatever you want here with the colors. You can, for example, you can try to find a neutral color, or even you can make it something like a sun color, but this is really up to you. But again, I like to use the gradient with the sky color set to this value. If you come here, you can copy these values. I'm not gonna go through them all, but it's 209, 30, 76, and the equator color is set to 206, 16, 2, and 91, and the ground color is set to 211, 26, 46. Now this is the most important one, the equator color. It's because if I change this, you can see here my avatar is changing its color, and that's exactly what you have to edit, because you don't want your avatar to be too bright or you don't want your avatar to be dark. So somewhere around the values that I'm using or works the best for me. Now that's it for the environment. There's a very important point that you have to worry about, because sometimes if you generate lightings or you edit all the settings and you don't see any difference, and this is because of the mesh itself. So if you, for example, if you select this tree and you go back to the inspector and you scroll down to the mesh filter. Now if you select the mesh filter right here, it will open up in the project panel. So if you select this mesh, for example, actually let me, you have to minimize this, and this is the palm tree. If you select the palm tree and you scroll down in the module, if you scroll down, you see here generate lightmap UVs. This must be turned off for you, and which will not affect the object itself when you generate lighting. So make sure you set the generate lightmaps UVs to true. I haven't messed around with the lightmap UV settings, but you can do that. I don't think that it's necessary. You just set the you turn on the lightmap UVs, and that's all you need. So basically you have to do it for every single one of them. And if you have too many objects, and for example you want to select all the trees, you can just select one and do Ctrl A to select all of them, and you can later come down here. It says here 20 module import settings, scroll down and enable the lightmap UVs for each one of them, and that should fix it. Now that's everything that you need to worry about: setting them as static, changing or enabling the UVs map, and changing the lighting environment and the scene itself, like I said, with the lightmap resolution. Now before we get into the post-processing volume, I already have a post-processing volume here. If I disable it, for example, you can see here my scene looks a bit dark, and that's how your scene would look like. And this is because the post-processing volume basically add color adjustment, saturation, sharpness, and you name it, whatever you want. This will just make your scene look better. We will go through this together later in the video. So right now that's done. You go back to the light maps or the lighting, and if you click on this arrow right here and you clear the bake data, this will basically, you'll look here, it's dark, it's back to, it looks like, okay. That's it. So basically, if I turn off the post-processing volume, you can see here my scene look like. Okay, so I'm going to disable this for now. I'm going back to the lighting. I'm going to set the light map resolution to 10, for example, and I'm going to click on generate lighting. Now you can see here our scene is getting better. It's already getting better. It's generating, it's baking the lights maps, and it is looking better already. And this is only 10 resolution, which we will increase later on when we finish everything. So now that's done, I can go back and enable the post-processing volume. This looks much better. And let me show you how to create the post-processing volume. You basically go to the hierarchy, right click, and you can create an empty or you can create a volume. And here you can say global volume. So global volume, you call this whatever you want. For example, I'm going to call this CC or post-processing, for example, post-processing. Now hit enter. You can reset the transfer by going to the transfer, right click and reset. And here we have this new volume. So basically hit new if you want to create a new profile, and this will create a new profile with the same name that you just named your object. If you click on add override, you can see here that we have post-processing and bunch of different effects that we can choose from. For example, there's something that I always use, which you can also use, but really depends on your scene, so you can mess around with this however you want, which is tone mapping. If I click on that and enable the mode and then put this to aces, you can see here the scene already looks a bit more clear. It's dark, which we will increase the exposure for it later, but if I change between neutral and none, you can see here that aces work the best for me. So I'm gonna add another override, and it's going to be post-processing again. And for this, I'm going to use color adjustment, and I'm going to enable the post exposure, and I'm also going to enable the contrast and the saturation. Now you can mess around with the numbers. For example, you can put it 1 or 1.2, and then the contrast, you can also increase it to something like 25, and then the saturation however you want. You can see here that you don't want it to too colorful, but you also don't want it dark. So something around 15, 20 works the best, as well as the color filter. If you want to add color to the scene, you can see here it's gonna change the color. You can make it, maybe make it match whatever sun color you have, but for now I'm not going to be using this. I'm gonna add another override, and this one is going to be a bloom. Now the bloom will make the scene look brighter. So for example, I have VFX here, let's say sparkles. You can see here it doesn't look bright. So if I go to post-processing and enable the bloom, the threshold, the intensity, the scatter, the tint, and the high quality filtering, and enable it, and then the threshold, we can change the value something like 0.4, and the intensity again to 0.4. You can mess around with the intensity. You can see here the scene is way brighter, but we don't want that. We want something around 0.4. And the scatter as well, you can also change this however you want to make it brighter or less bright. So I'm gonna go with something like 0.8, as well as the tint. The tint is up to you whether you want to change it or not, but you can see here it literally changed the entire scene color. I'm gonna go with something around yellow. It doesn't have to be yellow, but it's up to you. And I'm also going to add gamma and gain. So post-processing, lift, gamma, and gain. Now this is gonna be a bit tricky, but this basically changed the entire thing. So I'm gonna enable everything. I'm gonna hit all, and I'm gonna change the values right here for the lift to something like, let's see, 0.9092. And we're also going to move the color a bit up to tune it a bit. And the gamma as well, I'm going to change it to something like 0.90, 89, 91, whatever. You can see here it's already changing our scene. And then there's the gain, and increase the gain a bit and keep it at 90, something around this. So for example here, we could do something like 80. Really depends on what you want it to look like. So basically, yeah, so this is the scene now. It's way better. It looks a lot better. And you can also add whatever post-processing you want. For example, the vignette, and you can enable the colors here. You can set the color to whatever you want. If you want to decenter the intensity, yeah, I'm going to show you what this does. You see here, it's just changed the border around the screen, which looks good. And you can also change the color to something like, you can also pick a color from here, make it a bit green, and that's it. That's basically it. That's how you create the lighting. That's how you do post-processing and everything. Now if you go back to lighting, you increase the light map resolution to something around 20, and then you hit generate lighting, and that's basically everything. If you were to add more lights, for example, if you have a dark scene and you want to add spotlights or point lights, you go back to the hierarchy, right click, and then select light, and inside the light there's something called point light and spotlight. Spotlight, I'm going to show you what they basically do. Let me just reset the transform for this, and there you go. So basically this is the light, this is the point light. It will basically light everything around it. If you change the mode to, it has to be baked, and you change, for example, the range. You can see here, this is the range that's going to affect the entire scene. And we also have something called in the lighting called spotlight, and the spotlight is similar to the flashlight. So for example, if I show you here, and let me change this from real time to bake, and I'm going to move this up, and also I'm going to rotate it 90 degree on the act, and you can see now this looks like a flashlight, or like if you know the post light, this is basically a light that comes from one point to hit another point, which is the ground in this scenario. If I change the inner and output and outer spot angle, you can see here it's basically changing the entire thing. And if you can't see this gizmo, you have to click on this little icon, visibility, and that's it. You can also change the color of the light. You can do it whatever you want, and then the intensity again, and the range. But remember, once you do this, you have to go back to the lighting and you have to generate lights again. And that's it. That's it for today. I hope you guys learned something new. I was talking fast because this is a quick example on how to change lightings. There isn't much to understand or to explain, but this is the right way to do it right now. You can also use light props, but you can find a lot of YouTube tutorial on how to use them. But I was mainly focusing on changing the UVS or Lightmap UVS for the object, and how to bake the map, how to change the colors, and how to add post-processing to your scene. And I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you in the next video.